Payments Podcast from Bottomline Technologies.
The events of 2020 challenged businesses in ways that no one could have expected. As we look at the top trends for 2021, much of the focus is on technology and platform advancements. As consumers and businesses, even the way we previously handled simple tasks has changed. Take paying for an item in a shop, for example. We moved from a cash society to a predominantly contactless one, and the same behaviour of embracing the change must apply to how we interact with the digital world around us. Hello, I'm Rich Williams, host of the Payments Podcast, and today I'm joined by Brian McLaughlin, Global Chief Experience Officer at Bottomline, as we discuss his predictions for 2021 in user experience and innovation in payments. Hello, Brian, and a very warm welcome onto the podcast for the very first time.
Hi, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Now, Brian, let's jump straight into it. Now, as we face a continuous digital shift, what trends should we be on the lookout for and stay one step ahead of in user experience and innovation, specifically this year?
Yeah, I think where I'd start is what I generally refer to as data experiences, and the reason that it's phrased that way is data has been on the new trends, coming trends for years, if not decades. And there's been a lot of technical advancement, a lot of permutations of data and making it more freely available across many different platforms and into people's hands. Where we haven't quite caught up is the experience of dealing with data. And I think coming into 2021, it's going to be that much more important that we start getting this right as the world continues to transition and rely more and more on the digital services. And the way I always think about data, it is really like finding a needle in a stack of needles. Essentially, you have this big pile. Everything from the outside or from a distance looks alike. But when you're in search of a specific needle and you approach that stack, you start realizing these are not all the same. Different shapes, sizes, thicknesses, etc. And generally, you're looking for something specific. So what happens with all this data is it can be a bit overwhelming. So as we start looking at this from an experience perspective, it's our jobs to figure out how do we make data useful to people that don't have a data science degree or training with analytics tools or all these other things. It really comes down to how do we make data actually useful for people in ways that can be consumed easily and quickly.
Now, Brian, the old adage, cash is king, appears to have been replaced more recently with data is king. And I think what you've just said confirms that. So how is data changing in 2021?
Yeah, the data itself, there are a lot of really smart people working on the data problem. Generally, the data problem is being approached from the perspective of how do I accumulate data, how do I store data, how do I manage data, privacy laws. It's a very technical approach. But as we start looking at it from an experience perspective, we really have to start looking at things like, the trends over the years have been, hey, look at this really pretty pie chart or line graph or any of these other kind of data representations that are done in these graphical formats, which are good. However, that is not ultimately where we're going to end up. It really does get down to there's an art and science of this data from the perspective of, yes, we have it, but how do people understand it? How do people interpret it? And more importantly is once you start down this path, the data starts revealing answers that you never even thought to ask questions about. It gets into volume of payments, but volume of payments by geography. And generally, this would be things like, oh, look at these 5 graphs that show this. And from an experience perspective, we're looking at, well, how do I make it simpler? How can I not be an analyst and get the value out of this that I need?
An interesting first trend there, Brian. Now, what else would you predict being an important thing to keep an eye on this year?
Yeah, I'd say as part of that, this is related to the data trend, is having integrated intelligence. And what I mean by that is very often, I don't know, you could be on your personal banking system or other kind of currency system, or it could be you work in a large company and you work in their accounting system. And a lot of times you'll have this tab that says reports or analytics or something of that nature. And what's going on there is I go over here to get smart and I go over here to do my work. And ultimately, where we have to get, and we are getting there, and by we, I mean like everybody is getting there, is we need to thread these things together. We need an integrated experience. We need that intelligence that's derived that we can get from all the data and all the learnings and have that integrated into the holistic experience. Otherwise, you end up with these little fragment places where, this is reserved for the people that understand data. It's like that. It should not be held in that regard. It should be, everybody should be able to derive value out of it. And the only way to do that is to really start integrating that into the overall experience that somebody goes through as they work through their payments world.
And do you have any use cases and real life examples of how we'll begin to see this sort of thing used?
Yeah, I mean, one that's actually it's out in the wild now, although I think there's a lot to be done to improve it, and that is, say this is more business banking. So I'll start with a business banking example. Is you have one group inside of the company setting up things like budgets for the year, but it could even get down to if you're a large enough company, like what is your furniture budget for the year, and then you have another group that's out buying furniture. And there's this disconnect between the two groups. So as we start looking at integrated intelligence, as the software continues to progress, as you start weaving these things together, when I'm going to buy more chairs, it'd be great to know if I'm about to tip over the budget. So rather than having to go someplace else to learn this, it's actually integrated in. So as we start looking at these things, it's more about tell me the information that'll be really valuable at this period of time, not sometime later, or you don't actually answer the question, or you allow me to fall into this trap and I didn't know I was falling into the trap. In the consumer space, we do see some of this already in terms of, hey, you're about to go over your threshold or whatever. Although there's additional sophistication that's going to come, such as if you're going on the trend you will be over budget. It's not so much you went over budget today, but it's more about you're going to do that over the next month, let's say, just because we're seeing the trends come in. And I'm also referring to something bigger than I see money coming in, I see money going out, and this is the problem you have. I'm talking about pulling in additional intelligence from the outside world. So, for example, if I'm a construction company and I'm doing my money in, money out budgeting activities, but I have another system that's pulling in, say, social media data or news data because it's scraping the internet and it's telling me, hey, so-and-so just won a big contract in this state. Well, that potentially is going to influence me because it means I lost the contract if I'm on that side. It could be if I'm a supplier, I have an opportunity there. So this is where payments is potentially a hub for that information, but the information can't be just consigned to the payments world. It's got to start bringing this other data that makes your whole value proposition that much more rich.
As we wrap this up now, Brian, what would be your final prediction for 2021?
There's another thing that we've been looking at for quite a long time, and by we, I mean like the UX world, not just my particular place of work, is advanced personalization. So what I mean by that is personalization is another thing like data that's been on top trends for years and years. And for the most part, most people understand this to be, it's generally confined to the consumer space from an e-commerce perspective, right? Is, hey, if you bought this, you're likely to buy that. And that's powerful. I mean, it works. If you are a e-commerce business and you have that kind of capability, I'm sure that you're getting more value than if you didn't have it. But what I mean by advanced personalization, it's more than that. It's actually starting to look at things like the way you use your digital world is like this. And therefore, I'm going to continue to adjust to not only make it easier for you to use the digital world, but I'm going to improve your efficiency with the digital world. So what I mean by that is, say, for example, I have a job that I end up doing the same repetitive things over and over and over again. The system starts to learn that, and it starts to either do it for me, or it starts to bring in additional information to help me do it better. So this is what I'm referring to as advanced personalization. So it goes beyond the, hey, if you like this, you'll like that. And it really starts getting into the position of getting to know individuals and then acting as though they know the individuals. which is a really important relationship. And it's one that we humans do all day long, and we do it naturally and don't really think about. It's very difficult to do in the digital space without coming across as spooky or distrustworthy or invasive or some other things. But there's a lot of ways to do this that none of those apply. It actually is a really helpful and something the digital world can be very good at, but it is very complicated and very, very difficult to pull off.
So, Brian, I'd just like to end on one final question, if I may. Now, as personalization becomes more advanced, how do companies ensure that they're on the right track? For example, we've seen the horror stories previously with a system saying hello and then exclaiming the wrong name. So how do we avoid these pitfalls?
Yeah, I mean, did I mention it's difficult? Yeah, I think I mentioned that. It's one of the things that ultimately what it comes down to is, and any UX person that happens to be listening will certainly get this, is it really comes down to understanding how humans interact with each other and how humans deal with change. And what I mean with that is if we start purely from a technology perspective, we run into problems because a lot of times we're not anticipating the fact that, but these humans, these complicated humans that are on the end of this, they don't react the way that I thought that they would, or this is not helping them, or it's not being accepted in a way that is considered useful, or it's considered invasive, or something else. So as long as we keep a sharp eye out for just the everything that we know about humans interacting with each other, and also how we interact with digital processes, this is something that's really going to go a long way. I mean, the example that I use often is so the iPhone comes out, right? So we all remember that day. If you're old enough, you certainly remember that day because there's a lot changed after that day. And shortly after that, people started discovering that there was geo-tracking in the phone. And there were all kinds of articles and all kinds of news stories about how, Big Brother is tracking you and it's really bad. And everybody's trying to figure out how to shut it off. And, I'll never buy an iPhone. I'll never buy a smartphone. And all these things started to happen. Well, if we wind into the future, say today, for example, so I'm in the Northeast of the US. And if for some reason I decided that, this afternoon, my wife and I want to go down to the Art Museum down in Boston, and I pull up my phone and I put in Boston Museum of Art. And not only does it tell me the web address, actually what it'll do is it'll give me directions there. It'll tell me the fastest way there. It'll tell me what the weather is going to be on my way there. It'll tell me, if I do choose that option, it'll route me around traffic problems. I've completely forgot about the fact my phone knew where I was. So there's a couple of things that are taking place there. One is simply the fact of things become normalized. And also I am getting enough value out of it that I'm willing to give up that piece of data because what I'm getting out of it is more valuable. So it's kind of a long-winded way to get to the hello, wrong name inserted in there. But it really does come back to understanding the humans and understanding how we as humans interact with change and making sure the pace of change is aligned with how people are willing to adopt it. There are going to be glitches along the way. Absolutely. I guess while I'm speaking about the iPhone, when voice came out, and as smart as it all is, and it would just get things wrong sometimes, things go wrong sometimes. But the amount that these systems get right is really, really impressive. So I think this is always going to be part of our journey. It's understanding the change, getting people to accept the change, and knowing there's going to be bumps along the way, and just keep pushing through them.
Brian, it's been really exciting having you on the podcast, and I'm sure this will give organizations some great direction into those areas they need to focus on this year regarding user experience and innovation in payments. And thanks once again for joining me today, Brian. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you, Rich.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time today, but in the meantime, you can listen to more episodes on all things payments at the touch of a button using your preferred provider. And don't forget to like, subscribe, rate the show, or leave a comment as you wish. And we'll see you all next time.
The Payments Podcast from Bottomline Technologies.